of German idealism and German romanticism. This division between idealism and romanticism is sometimes not correct. No other notable philosopher kept himself at such distance to the academic constraints of the system. Yet his philosophy in itself forms an integrated whole. The terms and definitions he used to say in reassuring those who consider a ready-made system indispensable, the terms and definitions do not form a line. They constitute a circle, and it doesn't matter at all where one begins, only that each definition needs to lead back into the center. We have a book, it is not translated into other language, Denkformen, the forms of thinking. Yes, you can show the ways of thinking to a certain degree. For example, in the philosophy of Hegel, you have circles, yes, that one concept turns to another concepts and returns. Yeah, it is, he showed that with Hegel and with the pre-Socratic philosophers and Aristotle. Given the seemingly irreconcilable separation of religion and philosophy caused by the rationalistic doctrine of the autonomy of reason, Franz von Baader undertook the great attempt to reconcile religion and philosophy again. In that he based himself mainly on the metaphysics or theosophy of Jakob Böhme and older forms of mysticism and theosophy. Baader's effort to reconcile religion with philosophy can all in all be seen as a critic of modern rationalism that teaches the autonomy of reason. Baader did not conduct this critique in a systematic manner. It resulted in the course of elaborating his philosophy. To clearly demonstrate Baader's critique on modern rationalism, we have to point out the respective principles in his philosophy. Baader, in order to accomplish his main task, namely what I mentioned, the reconciliation of religion with philosophy, developed his speculative or religious philosophy and his speculative dogmatics or speculative theology. Philosophy and theology together. The contents of the speculative philosophy and the speculative theology are identical. This content is the revelation of being, the being of God, and the divine revelation, creation, the fall, and the world redemption. The speculative philosophy and the speculative theology do, however, differ in their methods. While the speculative philosophy will attempt to gain the contents of divine revelation from an analysis of self-consciousness and cognition, of society and of nature, the speculative theology begins with God and with the theological premise that man is the image of God. So his philosophy is founded in the revelation. Regarding the aforementioned three approaches to divine revelation and the speculative philosophy, the analysis of self-consciousness and cognition forms the beginning. We can see in his philosophy that he is using the terminology of German idealism. Yeah? One of the key words is the word awareness or consciousness. And the Latin word for consciousness is conscientia. And it means, on the one side, consciousness, I'm conscious to do that and that, or I have a philosophical consciousness. This is a very modern term. He uses that, and he uses that to explain even the theosophy of Franz von Baader. Baader here apparently follows the usual procedure since Descartes, in the beginning, where philosophy begins with the theory of cognition, epistemology. The difference between Bader and Descartes will be dealt with later on. The beginning of philosophy for Bader is to ask the question of what founds the ground of being and thinking, cause. It is the question of the ontological noetic foundation of being and thinking. It is the question of the ontological noetic, yes. And for Bader, the basis and the founding principle is that which brings forth, sustains, and assists. That which brings forth beingness is that which founds it, sustains it, and assists it. And this solely as the principle which simultaneously creates, founds, and sustains. And this is more than merely the first causation of the first motor, as it is, for instance, with Aristoteles. We spoke about it. It's the motor, the first motor of all of creation is God. That's the Aristotelian doctrine. To a certain degree, you can find that in Christian dogmatics, if it is simple, yes, if it is simple. But it is in the great theories, of course, a different presentation. When that which brings force, sustains and assists is the founding, then the first founding is that which initially brings force and sustains. We will discuss here the question of causa and causa sui in the terms of German mysticism. However, can only be that which brings forth itself and thereby founds itself, causa sui in Latin. The first bringing force and founding cannot bring force and found another without first having and brought force and founded itself. Only in being self-founded, as the self-founded, can it be founding. Here begins dialectics and paradoxes, a paradoxical text. A primary causation that is not founded in itself, can it be founded in itself? Can it be the primary causation? A thinking which is not thinking within self and self-consciousness, but the thinking and consciousness of others, is not founding and bringing force of thinking and consciousness. Therefore, I'm so critical if somebody explains something as an imitation and is not creative. The primary causation is because the bringing force is the founding. Bringing force itself, thinking itself, conscious of itself. This bringing force itself and generating itself, generatio sui, by no means takes place in the finite realm, but in fact in the beginningless eternal life or of unconditioned divine reality. In this sense, self-begetting, that's a terminology of Meister Eckhart, self-begetting is very foreign to Muslims, self-begetting. And self-founding means to eternally bring forth and having brought forth oneself in a paradox cycle and to eternally become conscious and be conscious of oneself. Bader here stands quite in the succession of Jakob Böhme when he says that the principle that founds itself as that which brings force has to begin itself, as it were, bring itself to consciousness and bring about its own knowledge itself. We are speaking about a divine reality. It has to be of itself as ase, ontologically and noetically, that is, it must have generated itself, its self-consciousness, and its knowledge itself. Bader emphasizes in this context that being, self-consciousness and knowledge are brought forth from a principle as a unity, and that this principle in its being, its self-consciousness, and in its knowledge is identical with itself, because otherwise it is not a self-founding and founding of the other, sustaining or assisting principle. The principle of founding must be self-founding in the sense of self-force-bringing, self-conscious and creative. These things you can explain in English not so good. Therefore we have the German language. They can do it in a perfect way. The truly founding principle is that which generates the knowledge as well as what it will do with it. Or absolute knowledge and absolute creativity are identical. Absolute knowledge and absolute creativity are identical in it, in the principle. Yesterday we spoke about principle. Yeah? That's not the beginning. The principle is exists. That's a wrong word. Exist. It is eternal. The teaching of the identity of subject and object in the self-conscious mind, or the mind's being with itself, as the teaching that the perfect realization is a productive one, which realizes as it brings forth. Did you understand that, more or less? It's difficult. But that's metaphysics in a modern terminology. Please ask if you understand something not. Therefore we are here.
I think it's emanation, I think.
Please?
Emanation.
Emanation? Yes.
Yes.
Emanation, yes.
But I think if things are explained in this way, it would question it, at least in my view. It would question the institution of prophethood as well as the creativity. How would you explain to this? How can we explain creativity of the God as well as the institution of the prophethood if things are explained in terms of emanation?
That's a very good question, because you have make a difference between the prophetic or religious presentation and the metaphysical presentation. He is on the one side founded in a revelation, without any doubt, yes? Founded in a revelation. He don't speak about prophets, that's the Islamic way of representing this way. You can find it in Mullah Sadra. There is very clear the metaphysical representation together with realization, yes? When he speaks about the reality of being, on the one side as a concept, on the other side higher as the realization. What we call in Thomas Aquinas actus essendi. That is a wonderful expression. It is not possible to translate. In German we can translate it, but actus essendi. Actus is the reality, the actuositas, in Greek energia. So that is a living process, that's the life, the divine life, that is not a mechanical thing. Yes, it is life. I beg?
Being actor.
Yeah. Yes. Actus essendi. Because it's very important here to know what is esse, that is being, and ens, that is existence. Yeah? It's not the same. In English, there is a great mixture with these concepts. Yeah.
And what is the difference between being and existence? Normally,
if your being is divine reality, if you have even the expression in Meister Eckhart and in the Orthodox spirituality, hyperousia, hyper in Greek, hyperousia, super being, super essence. God is not being, he is super being. Yes. Supra, yes, supra being is high. But you can say being too, but it depends from the context. It depends from the context.
And existence would be inferior?
Existence depends from being. Our being and our existence depends, we are existing because God, we are participating in God's being. That's the metaphysical expression of that, what you can say in religion, of course, yes.
Can we say we are participating? It is an act of, is a deliberate act. Rather, I don't know, is the real question, can we say that we are participated?
Please.
We are somehow participated, not participating.
Yep, both. On the one side, ontological, we are participated. That's clear.
Ontologically.
Yes.
That is somehow
an
ontological approach.
Yes.
But on Sohrawardi, we come to this result that the very knowledge of God is the being of thing.
Yeah. There is a great difference from Sohrawardi to Munasadra.
Okay,
according to the expression of being, yes.
Yeah.
In what is in Arab? It is
wujud.
Wujud. And you know, if we speak here if we speak in English, and wujud translated as being wajada, that's the core, the root of wujud. Wajada, find, we find. Yes, it's completely different from the Western Latin Greek
the
word
being
est, yes. Yeah. They don't have the Arab language has not the expression est, yes. But they have wonderful description of this process, Sohrawardi, and more Munasadra, yes. And the difference is between I explained that in is being an accident or it is the essence, and that's the difference between Ibn Arabi, between Ibn Sina, Sohrawardi, and Munasadra.
But this is beyond that. This is not talking about being accident or essence. You are talking about an identical entity. And my question is on this being identical, the possibility of identical.
Yes, that is.
Then not when you say knowledge and creativity are identical.
Yes.
Mean that according to the discussion you said yesterday, we
forgot all.
We are absolutely dropping object and subject.
Yeah.
And we are absolutely dropping historicality.
Yeah.
Is that, or historically?
Very sharp.
Very sharply. Therefore, we come to some abstract realm out of any definition. I agree. That I can understand why definition cannot be put in that box. But if you want to imagine, creativity is identical with knowledge.
It is not the identity of architects, of painters. It is the creativity of God within self.
Okay, but in Sohrawardi it is understandable. But in Mullah Sadra, which is emphasizing, of course, if I may be presumptuous, he is trying to somehow miraculously mix the two. I don't know if he's successful or not in that point, but however, he is relying on wujud.
Yeah.
Having that, then knowledge is identical to creativity. Could be explained?
Yes.
I don't want to say no, but I want to know how.
Yeah. We will see. Because it is one of the main questions, even in the philosophy of Franz von Baader, to show that. And he's using here modern terms, self-awareness, creativity, well, as a translation of the process of creation. It is an active thing, yes, and not creation is everyday creation for him. And creation is, we will see that after we have at first the process of the self-awareness, of the self-knowledge within God. And that is a process. The living God is not a point or such thing if we will use symbols. He is an indefinite process within self. He is life, hayam, within self. Yes, and we can not grasp this life. It is a description. It is not a definition. And in his description, he is great. Yes. Well, I try.
So when you say that, to give some change in the atmosphere, when you say that he's in fact whispering with himself,
Yeah.
You reminded me of the hint by Hafez when he said that که بندد طرف وصل از حسن شاهی که با خود عشق بازد جاودانه. Means that nobody will get anything from the beauty who is making love with himself.
Yeah. You can. It depends from the from the level of understanding, but it is corresponding to this at the highest level.
Okay.
What is it? Can I ask not just clarifications? If it is absolute knowledge and absolute creativity is identical,
Yeah.
so the absolute act cannot be moral act.
Absolute act?
How about the absolute act? It cannot be moralistic act.
No. There is no morality. Morality is on a lower level where human beings need an order. On this level, you don't need morality. You are within the realm of divinity. There is no morality. That's shocking. Huh? Morality begins with the human society. They need laws and so on. Yes. Shocking, huh?
If you want to be on time, we have another 5 minutes.
No, of
So
course,
if
yes.
you prefer, you continue the questions or you continue the main text.
Please, because ask if it is, if you will add something or.
I was just going to ask you to clarify that when you were making the division between morality on the different levels. Just go a bit further, because you very easily disassociated it from this, and I wanted to hear a bit more on why you.
No, yeah, the union with God is not a morality. It's not in the realm of morality. Yes, morality is to live together and to have the rules for that. You can find in the text of Chuang-Tzu that there is a description. In the paradise there were no laws. All were together and it was peace and it was wonderful. Then mankind was worse, has come down, and so we need laws. The laws are a result of the descending development of humanity, and therefore are laws. The laws are necessary because you need laws, but the laws is an instrument. It is not a thing in itself. That's terrible. The moralists are terrible people, with the exception of the French moralists. Of course, they are poets. Yes, but that's another thing. But the moralist is how can you live with a moralist? He every day knows that that is law and so on. No, life is life. But you need for the society, for to live together, laws, rules, and the religion give these rules. It depends from the religion, of course. And there are, certainly, the Semitic religions have, of course, they are to a certain degree nomocentric. They are nomocentric, and therefore the balance between esotericism and exotericism is necessary, because it is a catastrophe if a society only is centered in nomocentrism. Please. No beauty if a society is nomocentered. There are only laws. That's that's normal to have the laws, but It is a result that something is wrong if somebody speaks about laws. Monsieur.
So, if I may, I'm sorry if it's a bit off topic, and please interrupt me. But since we are 1 or 2 minutes, I will try to make a very small excursus about being and creativity. I think if you have spoken about yesterday about jnana, the knowledge in Sanskrit, etc. Actually, in Sanskrit, I believe in other tongues also, the idea of being and the knowledge and creativity, everything is linked. I will try to make some arguments. The verb to know, to jna, pronounced correctly, it should be actually gna. So the root jna, the verb to know, is very close. Actually, it's almost the same root as the root jan, which means to make someone be born, and that's for the noun, the first name in the Vedic, that means Proto-Sanskrit of the woman is Jani. And you find the same in for example, in Farsi Zan, that's the same. And in many European languages, you also. So the idea of knowledge and the idea of creativity is.
And you have both elements in this. You have on the one side the metaphysical or ontological, bounded to the biblical or religious terminology, creativity. God is actor, God is creator. And we mean here with activity God's activity to create something.
And there is also the opposite, because in the verb to be, the root is as in Sanskrit. As also means to eat. So it's the destruction. And
of course, that's the Hindu.
Yes. And so there is always the idea of being is seen either as a creation or as a destruction in the very the most primitive stratus of the Sanskrit language. And I think in many languages also the idea of being is comprehended as a creation or a destruction. And so
generally.
that was just
but in Vedanta it is very clear. Yes, in Vedanta. You spoke about the Vedic and pre-Vedic text, but in Vedanta it's very clear. You can Vedanta make a comparison to the Islamic philosophy. That is not a problem. And Guénon did it. L'homme sans devenir selon le Vedanta.
The Vedanta is the intellectual elaboration of that, and it means Veda, the Veda, and Anta is the end. So it's literally, it means the end of the Veda. And
that's so end of the Veda means esotericism, the top of knowledge. Ved. You have in different languages this expression Ved, to know the top. It is the top of knowledge, metaphysical knowledge, of course. Yes, that is the meaning of Vedanta, and that is the esoteric doctrine of Hinduism. Within Hinduism, Hinduism is completely different to Semitic understanding, because in Hinduism you have many darshana schools, and they tolerate each other more or less, or not. We are here very dogmatic, yes, in the West, and the Semitic thinking is very dogmatic and so on. That's a great difference. Therefore, we need esotericism in the religion. Yeah? And the Shia is from the very beginning, we can say it simply words, mystic, the true Shia. And
okay, may I ask you a question? It may be a very obnoxious sort of a question, but I think I should ask. What do you say about, if we condemn modernity and all its, metaphysical foundations, and we say that it's not good? So how would you draw a relationship between a philosopher who practices, who lives in a life world, and who has certain philosophical attitude of philosophy, in fact. So if that contradicts, so for example, if I condemn modernism, it says, look at, I'm having everything like, mics sitting in the, in this structure, architect, roads, a lot of things. So aren't we the offspring of the modernity? And if we are, and if it becomes inevitable, so how can we condemn? And if we condemn, so won't that be a contradiction that we are condemning something, but we are, we have to be living in the modernism?
We live in the modernism, yes. And we have to certainly. Please,
I think we shouldn't conflate modern philosophy, modern ideas, modern paradigms, modern thought with technology. I think those are different.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you? Oh.
Yeah, because obviously we live. Obviously, yeah. I have an iPhone. I have a laptop. I have everything. But that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to critique modern thought and modern conceptions of knowledge, modern conceptions of philosophy. I think those are distinct from whether we live in modern architecture